Brian Stevens here with the National Real Estate Post. I have today a stark warning for those who work at and those who own independent mortgage banks in these tumultuous times right now, because this could happen to you and this could happen to your company. Today I have Eric Bowlby with me. He's been with the company since 1998 and has owned the company since 2006. A lot of you are familiar with the brand AmeriFirst, a lot of the innovative programs and products that they put out over the years, at a very, very successful independent mortgage bank by anybody's standards. Now, Eric has had a turn of events over the past couple of weeks that have been nothing short of shocking to watch from the sidelines. And I want to bring you this interview to let you know that this could happen to you and this could happen to your company. So Eric, how are we doing this morning?
And I'm sure as everybody else in the business, there's been better years. What we're getting ready to talk about, it's been, as you put it, it's been shocking. So I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, we're about a 2.
A couple of weeks ago, you were the owner of AmeriFirst Financial. Is that correct? Did you have a board? Were you the only owner? What did that structure look like?
So it's a partnership between myself and my father. I own 65%. He owns 35%.
Okay, so what's taken place over the past couple of weeks that has compromised that position?
So we did a deal with a hedge fund, a few years back, did a capital raise to grow the company. A couple of weeks ago, well, I shouldn't say a couple of weeks ago, we agreed to restart the company after a previous fight we had had with them and some notice of defaults that went on for those. I think we actually have done a story about this already, so I won't bore your viewers with it again. So we agreed to restart the company. They got us excited. That actually agreement went into effect on May 15th is when we agreed. Since May 15th, we've done nothing but battle. So personally, I believe that they got me to back off because I was in a litigation against them for wrongful acts that they had done in December, but agreed to drop that suit on May 15th. Since May 15th, they have been in breach of everything we agreed to, on dozens of occasions. So they come in as part of the agreement. They have what's called a DACA account, where all monies that earn in the company go into this DACA account to make sure that I'm not spending money frivolously, that I'm not just going to yank the money and go somewhere else. And what they would do is they would come after they've done these breaches, and knowing that I was not happy with the breaches, they would wait until payroll. And they would wait till like 20 minutes before payroll's due, and they'd come in and say, well, we're not going to give you access to your DACA money. The money that's in these accounts, we're not going to let you have. And so then I'd have 20 minutes to solve the problem to make payroll. And they would say, but we'll give you access to your money, provided you sign this release that you're not going to sue us for wrongful acts. And I would say, well, I'm not going to sign that. And they'd say, well, then tough luck, you can't have your money. Well, the last time they did it, which would have been right before the August 20th payroll, I filed a notice of default against them and said, look, you guys are not sticking up to your end of the bargain. You need to get back in line. This is our agreement. Let's move forward. We filed the default on August 22nd. So it wasn't right at payroll. We prepared the motions and everything. We filed it on August 22nd. On August 24th, I get a letter delivered to my office, that my Gilbert office, in which they sent it down to my Mesa office. I open it up and I see that they're filing a notice of default on me. And I didn't finish reading it right then and there. I just scanned it, sent it to my attorneys. And then we quickly hop on the phone. And while I'm on the phone with my attorneys, we have a group show up at my office. The group is a company called Paladin. Paladin was hired by the hedge fund that I was in battle with. So what effectively had taken place is they went behind our backs, never even had a chance to defend myself or speak in front of a judge. They took control of our stock. They ousted my father and I as owners. They ousted us as the board of directors. They brought in a new board of directors, and then they decided to file bankruptcy. So, by the way, this is all public information. You can go, you just have to go to Delaware because the way that this hedge fund did it, they created a new company to take control of the stock. Now, you can read in my motions against trying to get this dismissal that they created this new entity. It's owned by the same majority controlling interested party in the other entity, a guy by the name of Milton. And that's where they put it. And they purposely did it in Delaware because Delaware is much more lenient towards creditors than it is towards owners. So they show up at my office to let me know that I'm no longer the owner, I'm no longer employed, and they showed up with armed guards. So fully armed.
Armed guns at your door.
Not a rifle like you're showing, but pistol, taser, handcuffs, fully bulletproof vest. And so they sent a group with the hedge fund to the corporate offices. When I say a group, it was armed guards, one person from Paladin, I believe, and then multiple people from the hedge fund. And then they sent another set of armed guards with Paladin to my office to take control and make sure that there was going to be no communication going to employees, that we weren't trying to take assets. They had told the judge that they were worried that I would be destroying assets and that I might be a violent person. And so they in fact, for 2 days, they had armed guards going through my offices. So my employees are scared. In fact, I had one employee who quit as a result of the tactics that they were using when they came in. In fact, very important employee, the guy who actually does all our finances, the controller of the company, if you will. He'd had enough. So they removed my access to my own account, so I couldn't send out emails. Like, their very first question was, what do we need to do first? And I said, we got to let the employees know what's going on, because rumors are flying because you walked in with armed guards. You're scaring people. You need to get an email out. So they agree, and they say, okay, let's put together an email. And we start typing it up, and they have to have it go through them, through their legal counsel. And it was funny because as they were typing it up, and they said, is this what you would say? I said, well, no, I wouldn't. And people are going to know this isn't written by me, but if you want me to send it out, I will. So they gave it to me finally, and they said, go send it out. But they had cut off my access. This is when I found out I couldn't actually send it. It took them a couple hours to get it turned back on. By then, you can imagine a lot of the damage had already been done.
Eric, I want to interrupt you real quickly. I want to make sure that everybody's up to speed with this. First of all, you filed a notice of default on them. They filed one on you. What was the default on in both cases?
So in our credit agreement, there was certain parameters we had to hit, saying we're going to do X, Y, and Z. We're going to do X amount of production. We're going to do things of that nature. And so their notice of default is technically not incorrect because we did not hit the numbers that we said we were. However, they created the problem. So the problem they had created is, I'll just give you an example. We came in, and one of the things in our revised credit agreement was that they would not stand in the way of us reopening a warehouse line as long as it was reasonable terms. So we worked with the bank. We got what we believed was reasonable terms. Then they refused to sign, right? So they actually had me relaunch the company, start bringing people over, start creating loans. We have a warehouse line that we've had multiple meetings with. They knew exactly what it was going to come down to. And then the day it came to actually do something, they said no. Went and found another warehouse line, got it, but now I'm postponed 30 days. Well, now my projections are off 30 days. And so they come in and say, well, you didn't hit these projections. And they're not wrong, but I didn't hit them because they didn't do their side. They didn't allow me to start funding loans. So on my side, I was putting them for failure to provide a warehouse line or sign off on a warehouse line. I put them for failure to giving me access to my funds to make payroll. And I put them in notice of default because they were not allowing the funds that we had agreed to use to start paying our bills. When I say things like paying our bills, they didn't want to pay our operating software bill. They didn't want to pay our Microsoft licensing software bill. And all the things that we had prearranged and pre-agreed to that we were going to do, we didn't. And so now, in their defense, one of their notice of defaults that they put out was I had a book of scratch and dent loans that I needed to sell and close, and there were delays in getting that done. All true statements, but still would have come through, still would have been completed. So that was their notice of default against us. Ours was, you're not allowing us to move forward. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. They would come in, they would say, well, you got to hit this matrix, but then they would create a problem to where you couldn't hit the matrix, and they'd say, oh, it's your fault.
Okay. It's scratch and dent loans. Boy, that I'm sure many independent mortgage bank has a book of those they're trying to work on right now. As outlined by Dave Stevens in an article he did a few weeks ago, talking about independent mortgage banks and all the reviews they're getting on their files and all the buybacks that they're looking at. Okay, the second point, I just want to be clear on this. You own 65% of the company. Your dad owned 35% of the company. You had this hedge fund in some capacity as a partner, but if you guys own the company, how were they able to wrestle ownership away from you if you guys had 100% and then oust you from the company? How is that legal?
I don't believe it is. So that's actually part of my contention, Brian. But I do need to, I failed in my previous statement. I was wrong. So technically, before we did the revised credit agreement, it was 65-35, my father and I. When we redid the credit agreement, technically we did sign over 9.99% of the ownership to this hedge fund. So they did, but we also did have our stock pledged as if we don't do things right, you can take the company. However, that would typically go into, you go to court, you talk about it, you have a right to defend yourself. I was giving no right to defend. So I have no idea how they actually were able to do it without any knowledge to me, without even anybody contacting me. The day I found out, or the time I found out, was when armed guards came to my office and let me know that I was no longer the owner.
So when they wrestled away control of this company from you and ousted you from the company. You weren't privy to that hearing. You didn't know what was going on. You weren't there. You were not able to argue on your behalf whatsoever. Then they subsequently filed bankruptcy on you. Why would you sign off on a bankruptcy then?
I didn't sign off on it. I have nothing to do with it. So they filed bankruptcy after I was no longer the owner. They've now had me released. They don't need my signature for anything. Now this Paladin group, who was brought in to be the chief reorganizing officer, he was elected to the board, and another gentleman was elected to the board. They have total control. I can't do, since August 24th, I have no authority to do anything at AmeriFirst. In fact, as part of our agreement, I actually was agreeing that I was working for free. So I'm taking no salary, no income, no nothing, and I still am. I'm still working for the company, helping the people to try and do what's right to take care of customers and take care of employees. I'm not getting paid. I'm not an owner. I have no ties whatsoever other than just trying to do the right thing. And even with that, I can't get them to do the right thing.
Okay, now I know this third party outside of any conversation with you or anyone else, that there was a conference call that was held with your loan officers, yourself, and folks representing this hedge fund. On that call, the hedge fund said that they were going to honor locks and they were going to fund deals that were in process, that were in line and ready to get funded. They told the loan officers that was going to take place. Is that correct?
It's same.
Did they fund those loans?
It's same.
When they stood before the courts and they wrestled control of your company away from you, if they would have told the judge that they did not intend to fulfill their obligations, their commitments, their promises that they made to the loan officers, the realtors, and the clients that represents, would the judge have handed over ownership to this group?
I wasn't privy to that meeting. Remember, I wasn't present. I wasn't notified. So I have no idea what was said or what was done in that meeting. There's two different things you have to look at. You have the meeting where they wrestled it, and then you have the bankruptcy court proceedings. The bankruptcy court, which again, you can go on and see all my motions to dismiss and my reasons why. The way they got through was that they were doing a reorganization. Now, they were very, very particular in the way they got the bankruptcy judge to agree with them, which was payroll needs to be made next week, and we're going to bring in and make. So it's funny, they wouldn't pay it 2 weeks before when they scrapped my money out of it. They took my money away, but now they're going to come in and they're going to make payroll, right? So they used the judge to go, okay, payroll's important. And they did tell the bankruptcy judge, we are reorganizing to make sure it is business as usual. In fact, that was the first day hearing in bankruptcy, which I'm learning all these things. I never knew anything about bankruptcy until now. First day hearing is to say, we're agreeing to do all these things, which, by the way, I helped them write what they were looking for, which was, we're going to fund loans, we're going to take care of customers, we're going to pay employees. Like we went through, we're going to continue to service the loans that we service for Fannie, Freddie, and Jenny. We had this whole list of things we were going to do. They have done everything that was in their best interest and nothing that was in the best interest of employees or customers, other than they did make payroll.
What was the legal grounds that they wrestled the company away from you? What did they say to the judge that the judge said, okay, Eric not being involved in this is a better idea?
I think they went in with the, look, Eric's in default. I don't think they told the judge that I had previously put them in default, but I can't say because I wasn't there. I was not privy to any part of that meeting. I have no idea what was said, no idea how they did it all. It was just, they showed up one day and they were in charge.
I hope this is sinking in for those who are watching right now, how little control you had over the direction that your company that you've owned for nearly 20 years, you've been a part of for 25 years, and it was just taken away. It almost seems whimsically to me. So is it done right now? Are there any court proceedings in front of us? What's the next step?
The next step that I have won't happen until September 11th. So I'm still contesting everything. The unfortunate part is that every step that they have made, you got to understand the people who are brought in, they're not mortgage people, they're bankruptcy people. So when I try to say, if you want to keep the company solvent, you have to do X, Y, and Z. They don't care. They're answering to, well, the bankruptcy, this is what we should do. And so they focus on bankruptcy, not on the going forward. And quite honestly, there's not going to be anything left by the end of this week. If I'm being honest, the steps that they're taking, there won't be anything left. So trying to get the dismissal and trying to get everything reversed, it will be too late. There is no coming back from the damage that they've done.
Their reorganization isn't taking into consideration the fact that you have time-sensitive transactions and locks that are closing, and they're just blasting and blowing through all of that, ruining all of your relationships, correct?
They are. But they went into the initial bankruptcy talking about reorganization. Every step that has gone on. And remember, these guys, technically they do work for bankruptcy, but they report to the hedge fund. So you have the fox in the hen house. The way it feels is they said it was a Chapter 11. they're treated like it's a Chapter 7. Anything that they might lose money on, they won't do. So they went out, for example, in the normal course of business, you as a mortgage company provide what's called reps and warrants to when you sell a loan. I'm repping that it's correct, and I'm warranting that if it's not correct, I'll buy it back. So that is a normal course of business. They will not provide reps and warrants. No reps and warrants means your loan is not worth as much. So now if they agree to, or they're saying they won't rep and warrant, now they're going to sell it for less than what it would be worth normally, which means they are probably going to lose money by funding the loan. So all choices they make on their own. But now they're going, well, it's not in our best interest to lose money. So it's the same problem I've had with them since day one. They create a problem and then use it as their justification as to why they don't want to do anything moving forward. Everything is to protect them. In a bankruptcy court, it should be to protect every creditor, right? That's what bankruptcy is. It's so everybody has a fair and equitable shot at the assets of the company. That would be all these people who've been standing in line that they weren't willing to pay per the credit agreement, but they're making the decision so that they get their most return of their money while hurting everybody else. So it's that very unfortunate.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand this point that you brought up about the reps and warrants. When you signed on, you had agreed to certain reps and warrants. And when they assume ownership of the company, don't they have to honor those reps and warrants?
Through bankruptcy, they're wiping out all previous reps and warrants.
So any other mortgage company that's going into bankruptcy could go ahead and wipe out their reps and warrants as well?
Anybody that's watching that owns their own company, if you want to reach out to me and discuss offline, I'm happy to do so. I would have personally never filed bankruptcy, Brian. It's not in my character. It's not in my nature. I would have figured out a way to build the company up and make more money and pay everybody back. That's what I've always done. But I'd be lying if I didn't say, now having been through some of these meetings, I could actually look you in the eye and go, bankruptcy was not a bad idea. Walking away from things that are going to put mortgage companies out of business. Let me give you some examples. We all got overly greedy 2020, 2021, and the first half of 2022. When I say overly greedy, it was more out of necessity. We had so much business coming in, we had to build an infrastructure to close it. So you added leases, you added employees. You were pushing your employees as hard as you could. Mistakes were happening. That's where when you mentioned earlier that the amount of buybacks that are coming, it's because we were all pushing things through this funnel. Well, all the buybacks are really from 2020, 2021. There's no ability to go back and fix them like we used to be able. And in a normal scratch and debt environment, you're buying these loans and you're going to sell them at a similar interest rate, right? If you do it within the first 60 days, I wrote the loan like in today's market, I did a 7% interest rate. Now rates are 7.25. I'm probably selling that at 98 cents on the dollar, maybe 95 cents on the dollar. But because all these loans are from when rates were 3, you're selling these loans at 75 to 80 basis point or 80 cents on the dollar. Huge losses. And so to be able to walk away and not hit that, the danger you would run is now, will anybody buy loans from you again, right? The reality is if you won't make these decisions, will anyone buy loans? You're going to be out of business anyway. You're not selling loans to anybody anyway. So if you're going out of business because you're buying back loans, you should really look at a Chapter 11 reorganization, wipe out the past, restart anew. You can get rid of all the bad leases you don't want to be in. You can get rid of, I'll give you another example, which I know you and I have spoken about. 80% of the mortgage world uses a company called Encompass as an operating software. And Encompass is masterful at renegotiating contracts. We were unfortunate. Our contract came up during that massive expansion. And then when the market changed and you're doing half the volume you once were, you were still stuck with Encompass's engorged contract, right? And if you reached out to them and said, look, if you don't work with me, I'm not going to make it. I need, you're too much. I'm not doing 1,000 loans a month. I'm doing 500 loans a month or whatever your numbers are. Because they would say your new minimum that you have to do is 1,000. Well, a minimum of 1,000 at $120 a file versus 500, that is a massive difference. Extremely huge difference. And Encompass would come back and say, well, everybody's asking for the same thing. And if we gave in to everybody, we're out of business. And I would say, well, if you don't give in to everybody, you're going to have no customers anyway. You're going to be out of business anyway. They're having none of it. So doing something like this allows you to put your vendors that aren't working with you back in place. Now, Encompass could very well come back and say, well, you filed bankruptcy on us. We won't do a new contract with. And 10 years ago, that would have been a problem because there wasn't as many operating softwares. Today, there's dozens to choose from. Now, it's painful to move operating softwares. I don't want to say like it's an easy thing. It is painful, but it's not as painful as making the payment on something you can't afford.
And some of these numbers are huge. It really is kind of interesting because I've heard that story before. It's the proverbial scorpion and frog story. It's a case where the parasite kills the host and kills itself in the process of doing so. And yet this is happening. But I hope everyone's listening up. This story, this scenario right now, which is taking place, is happening with mortgage companies all across the country. I think if we see our pricing change, if we see our condition lists grow longer, if we find our funding's not necessarily being met by our company, who knows what's going on behind closed doors. If you're a loan officer watching this right now, and if you're an owner or you have an interest in an independent mortgage bank right now, what advice would you give to either one based on what you've seen your optics over the past few weeks?
I'll start with the owners. If I was the owners and I wasn't feeling comfortable with where I was at, I would be looking at what are my options? What can I clean up? What can I walk away from? Again, if any owners are watching this, you want to reach out to me. Having been through it, I'm happy to help other people go through the same ordeal. There are good options, not the way I went, or I should say, not the way that the hedge fund decided to go. I think the way they went was nothing but problems. But there are good, legitimate ways that you can reset, and I'm happy to discuss with anybody who wants it. For the loan officer, look, the loan officers have a whole different set of problems that they've got to deal with. Company is certainly one of them, right? And I can look at you and say, without knowing, I have led my loan officers down the wrong path. These last 2 weeks, thinking that there was a real reorganization, it was wrong. I was told it was. I moved forward if it was. The reality is I should have told them to move their files or transfer their files, because we're now damaging customers, which means you're damaging relationships. So being with a company that isn't necessarily going through the season, even if they are, I'm not saying that every company that's going through these things, you need to just pick up and run and bail. If they've been good to you, just have very open and transparent conversations. I thought I was happy to open and transparent conversations. I was just being misled on what the real realities of what was going on. But, find out what your options are. Look for ways to, in this market, rate battles are real, right? You have people who are, because there's so much competition out there, if you can't compete, you're going to lose 30, 40% of your business just to price. So I'd say pricing is something you should be looking for. Tools to help you do more business, because if you used to be able to survive on doing 2 loans a month, that means now you got to be at 4. If it was 5, you need to be at 10. You're not going to make as much per transaction, so you got to do more transactions. And by the way, the real estate agents have the exact same problem. They are being beat up even worse than the mortgage industry are. In fact, I'll give you an example. This happened to one of my oldest agents. I've known him. Actually, I knew him since he was like in the 7th, 8th grade. Yeah, I'm about 3, 4 years older than him. He was good friends with one of my younger brothers. And he told me he didn't notice that, the customer went online, they found the house they wanted. They say, hey, go show us this house. He thought, this is fantastic. They're finding the house they want. I just have to go show it. He goes and shows it, pulls it up. And even though it was like a $600,000 sales price, the co-broke was $4,000. And what do? Tell your customers, I don't want you to buy a house because I'm not going to make enough money? No, it's not the right thing for the customer. But right now, listing agents are taking control. They're paying less on co-brokes because they can. There's a lack of inventory. So everybody is under attack, and you have got to find out, what are you going to do to go meet more agents, or are you going to go with a direct to consumer approach so that you can hand out and get people working with your agents? And I believe you got to do a little bit of both. So as a loan officer, I'd say strap in. You got to double down. Whatever you thought you were doing before work-wise, you got to do twice as much. You got to be willing to do things that you probably haven't done in the last 10, 15 years. You got to go back to the basics, and you've got to work towards it. If you notice that your company, in fact, I think you used to be involved in the employment, weren't you, Brian? I'm sure that's making a comeback, right?
Yeah.
Watching for it. Again, it doesn't mean your company is going out of business, but you do have to be cognizant of it. And what some of this does is it leads everyone running towards brokers, because brokers are easier to set up and shut down and don't get a lot of regulation. And I'm not saying that's a bad way. It certainly is an option, and it can be done. And it can be done profitable. But there's a lot of things that I think are coming down the pipes in the broker world. I was reading in an article the other day that the CFPB is now seeing how brokers have different comp plans based off of where they sell loans to. If they actually come and do that, and you're doing it as an LO, I would say stop, or get to a company that's more compliant friendly. So with all the pressures you have of what's going on with the industry with buybacks and pushback from Fannie, Freddie, Jenny on loans, the lesser inventory, the higher interest rates. In addition to all of that, you're also looking at, there's going to be more regulation coming down the pipe. So not easy times. The only thing I can do, put your head down, work hard. That's what it's going to take.
Control what you can control, my friends. Hey, listen, if you guys would like to have a conversation with Eric Bowlby, we have his information on this page. Feel free to reach out to him. I've known Eric for years. He's always been a straight shooter with me, and he'll give you the best advice that he has available to him. And his optics right now are certainly very different than a lot of folks in the mortgage industry. However, that's going to be changing soon. Eric, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And hey, listen, we all get dusted up sometimes. It's what we do after, right?
Dust yourself off, get back to work.
Thank you so much.